brief the cover to a designer, and one of the considerations that we have to think about now, sort of in a digital age, is how well a cover will read on screen. So we all know, or we can look by printing it out in color, how the cover is going to look at 8.5 by 11. But it's nice and glossy. But what is a little bit less hard to tell sometimes is how it's going to look shrunk down to a thumbnail on a computer screen, which is oftentimes how the cover is being displayed. So I'm curious, this is one that we struggled with for a really long time, and I would love to know, just by show of hands, who prefers the cover on the left, the collage? Okay. Who prefers the cover on the right? Wow, okay. Is it because we're all American? I don't know. And 10 points if you know who the designer is. Any guesses? It's Catherine Malandrino, who's actually not an American, believe it or not. So again, I think that it's kind of obvious looking at it why one of them works better than the other. And especially looking at a thumbnail size, why one is more impactful than the other. I mean, other things we consider when we're working on cover designs is how well composed the cover is there balance, are the colors working, is the title legible, which, believe it or not, is often not a very high consideration for designers. And does it represent diversity? More and more, I think it's, especially for myself, working with art programs and working with images that we're seeing coming down runways and pulling images from fashion shows and fashion collections. The conversation that happens in the industry about the lack of diversity on runways is something that filters directly into, I think, what I do, and oftentimes I kind of feel the same way as those critiques who say, you know, there really should be more diversity on the runway, and therefore more diversity in the photo options that we have. So, okay, so back to the production process a little bit. We talked about XML. So basically, some of the ebook formats, like I mentioned before, is an ePDF, which is a fixed format, and EPUBs. EPUBs are basically the industry standard right now. They can be read by iPads, by all different types of readers. And the main difference is whether it's a reflowable or a fixed format. I only bring this up because a lot of times the discussion about ebooks is about sort of what they do or what they can do, basically. And when it comes to reflowable text, this is where you have a lot more opportunities to embed things into the text and sort of make the e-publications a little bit more dynamic. One of the issues that we face in publishing, and I know that this is something that magazine publishers deal with, as well as book publishers, is how your page is represented. I mean, we take a lot of time and a lot of care in our page layouts to make sure that the text and the image are placed properly, that things are where we want them to appear on the page. When you're reflowing ebooks or reflowing text, it sort of just goes wherever it wants to, based on the size of the device. So you lose page numbers, you lose sort of that control over the presentation. And for illustrated books, it's one of the most important things, is making sure that that presentation is perfect. So that's one of the things that we sort of deal with. So oftentimes we use a fixed format, and then there's also whether or not it's color or black and white. So I mean, some of the benefits, I think, obviously, of producing ebooks are obviously having a lot of versatility, having flexibility. How many of you actually bring your books to class ever? Anyone know? Because they're really heavy. So with ebooks, I mean, do you find that if you have an ebook, you're more likely to access it, you know, somewhere outside of your room? I mean, I think the idea behind it, what I hear a lot of times, are that You guys are really busy, you don't have a lot of free time, and so it's probably easier for you to have something that you can take with you and that's with you anytime. So if you have 10 minutes on the bus and you need to read a chapter, you can do that. If you are, between shifts at work and have a 30-minute break and want to study, that it should be convenient and it should be easy for you to do that. So I want to talk, and I'll just go kind of quickly through these, a little bit about the different business models for digital products. I'm not going to go through each of these, but I'll say that the products basically that we're working on right now have largely been subscription models. So it's basically one sort of collective where either a student or a university or institution gets a login and can sort of go in and access a lot of information at once. The different models are, obviously ownership model where you either get an ebook and download it and it's yours forever, or oftentimes you're sort of renting it and it expires after 180 days or so. So the steps sort of that we go through when we plan digital products are, again, not very different from when I'm working on a proposal. So I'm asking a lot of questions, really trying to define what it's going to be. So what is it exactly? What's in it? Who's going to access it? How are they going to access it? How are they going to buy it? And most importantly is who's going to build it and when is it going to launch? So those concepts are sort of further developed, a schedule's put in place, and then sort of a business model is assigned. And that's not to say that it can't be more than one. So something can be this subscription model and an ownership model, but it has to sort of come down to different, it relates to access and to price. So that's really the main differences between the different business models. Then we move on to drafting requests for functionality, which is something that we would turn over to a developer. At that point, they'll sort of let us know what's feasible and what's just completely a product of our imagination. And then we'll work on a P&L, which is a profit and loss statement. This is really when we assess whether or not it's a financially viable product. Again, we'll conduct market research. This is done in the form of focus groups, sending out surveys, talking to students, talking to professors, looking at what other related products or competition exists. Then we move on to writing a plan, and then building it, launching it, and refining it. So, with digital products, I think the most important thing is just getting it up and getting it running. It's not so much about getting it perfect. Once it's up, I think then you sort of get into that process of analyzing it, getting feedback, and refining it. I think that's true for most digital products or websites. Less time is really being spent on the concept phase, and a lot more time is spent on testing it sort of once it's up. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a tour of one of the digital products that Bloomsbury has published called Berg Fashion Library. So Berg Fashion Library is an online portal that offers comprehensive coverage of dress and fashion around the world. It's interdisciplinary and it's loaded with images, books, and journal content. So there's a few different kind of interesting things I wanted to show you. So one thing is you can sort of explore by time. So I think this is particularly useful for students studying historic costume, for costume historians, for researchers. So you pretty much scroll over a period. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'm afraid I won't be able to give you a tour after all. I'm sorry. Well, I have some slides I can show you. Actually, let me try plugging this in. This might connect to the internet. Sorry about that. Okay, well, I guess I'll have to tell you what's in the website. So there are a few different things. You can search by time period. You can search by place. So this is the explore by place and explore by time. It has an extensive image bank from the V&A, from the Met, from London College of Fashion, from FIT, and a handful of other historic costume collections. So what's sort of neat is you can go in and you can search by garment type. So if you type in hat, everything related to hats comes up. So it might be a series of articles. It might be entries from the Encyclopedia of World Dress. It might be 30 or 40 images across the different costume collections. And then you can sort of drill down from there and read articles. You can cross-link between articles. So say you're looking for hats from the 1920s. You can then sort of drill down by time period. So it's a really powerful research tool, and it's a really great aggregation of a lot of different costume collections and a lot of different images from various places. So it's sort of all centralized. And I actually use this a lot myself when I'm doing image research. Not that I can get rights from this website, but if I'm looking for a specific garment type, or I'm looking for a specific silhouette, or even an embellishment technique or fabric, you can use this as a tool to locate images and also articles, books, and other reference works about a specific topic. So the next product I wanted to talk about a little bit today is one that we're working on to launch next year. It's called the Bloomsbury Fashion Photography Archive. And I think in some ways it's a little bit similar to the photo sites that I showed you earlier in the way that it's organized. It's a searchable and indexed collection of about 600,000 images. These come from a photographer called Niall McInerney, who was basically a fashion photographer who took images from runway, street style, backstage, from the late 1970s until the early 2000s. And it's going to be sort of replete with articles, with videos, with audio. It'll be searchable, but it'll also be put into sort of a context. So this is an example of a wireframe. So earlier when I mentioned a request for functionality and getting developers involved, this is sort of the first visual that we would see when we're planning out a product and how things are supposed to appear on screen. So I don't know if you can see